Speaking of spooky and scary, yesterday USA almost lost to Serbia.
Almost lost, down by 19 points. Would not have been a good loss. I'm sure we would have handled that one well as a country.
I'm sure people would have felt awful for those athletes.
Lafoni!
Lafoni.
I've seen a lot of that.
Captain LaFake. Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank God they won.
Is this White George the GOAT?
That's right. He can never be the GOAT. He lost to Serbia in the semifinals.
I love that we pretend that Serbia doesn't have one of the greatest basketball players we've ever seen and also another NBA guy on the roster.
Also, just how much more difficult it is to play internationally now as opposed to, 30 years ago when they weren't dominating the NBA.
9 NBA players played internationally against the Dream Team. 65 play internationally against Team USA. This is not 1992.
Exactly. And how many does France have? Like 5 or 6,
yes.
I think.
Yeah, you got Fournier, you got Wemby, you got Gobert. Who else?
When I told
Batum.
you,
Nick Batum.
How can you forget Blazer legend Nick Batum?
Blazer legend.
He was good in that game yesterday.
I know.
Was he?
He was very vital for them.
Role player.
So I want to ask you this before we dive into the action. That was the best basketball game you've watched. This is becoming an interesting debate for people. I did kind of go to the place of how I felt about it. Was that the best basketball game I've watched, given the stakes, since Game 7 Cleveland Golden State? Now, that's probably being a little hyperbolic, but there are people that felt that way because if we lost, like, we're playing for bronze. This team is playing for bronze.
Major disappointment.
Massive upset city, 16-point favorites, losing to Serbia. And by the way, not just losing, they were getting their asses handed to them by Serbia. They couldn't miss a three-point shot. And I don't know where I've come on that thought of best basketball game, but it's certainly in the running for best I've seen since Game 7.
I think you need the unique combination of storyline, the what's at stake, and then a quality game to go with it. And I don't know how many games in the NBA have matched those 3 criteria. Like, of course, you have had a better game at some point in the early playoffs or in the regular season.
We had Game 7, Denver, Minnesota this year.
Sure, it was a huge comeback, and they were down by 20 in the first half, and they dug out of the hole. But if I remember correctly, that ended up being kind of a runaway double-digit win. They ended up winning the game by like 20, didn't they? They won going away.
I think they were down 20. And then they came back in the second half, and Denver didn't do anything.
Couldn't respond at all,
yeah.
and they just kind of blew them out of the gym in the second half. You have to have that perfect storm. There have been better individual games, but like Game 70 of the regular season does not have the same implications as a semifinal game to go to the gold medal game in the Olympics or a Game 7 of the NBA Finals. I was just scrolling through the last handful because I think it has to be an NBA Finals game to match the stakes that were at on display yesterday. This year in the NBA Finals, not even close. There's not a game that stands out. I can hardly remember any of them. The year before, same thing. We have back-to-back 5-game series with Denver and Boston winning. You had the Curry game in Boston. I remember vividly of him going off. Was that Game 3 or Game 4 when they won that series?
That was Game 4.
Game 4.
That tied it 2-2.
They had that was the one that I was like, I remember that being a big deal, and they were down in the series, and he got hot, very similar to what happened yesterday.
Yep.
Kind of carried them to a win. That was a great game. The year before, Milwaukee-Phoenix was an interesting series, but I don't remember one of them being like an all-time classic game, and then you had the COVID year. And so I don't think it's outlandish to say that's the best basketball game that we've seen since Game 7 of the NBA Finals in 2016.
Yeah, if you don't want to comp it to the NBA, it certainly is the best Olympic game since the 2008 gold medal game with Spain and America. And we were that was the Redeem team.
The Gasols and all that,
Yeah, it was a young Ricky Rubio. You had the Gasol brothers, like
Rudy Fernandez.
That was, I'll never forget. I think I woke up, I want to say that game was kind of early in America.
Yeah,
I forget where 08 was it Greece?
I think so.
I forget where the 08 Olympics were, but I remember it being a fairly early game.
Beijing.
Oh, Beijing.
2008 was Beijing.
So you had to, I think you wake up pretty early for that one. I was at my buddy's house watching that with him, and we were just like gripping our couch because it's like, dude, we got bronze in 04.
Yeah, Kobe running through Pau Gasol on the first set of the game, setting a tone immediately.
Yep, that was
against
great.
His LA teammate.
We had Olympic Melo.
We did. That was the peak of Olympic Melo.
That was the last time I remember feeling that in the Olympics with basketball, because we've largely been taking care of business, but the international pool's gotten more talented. And just watching that, like, I don't know about you. Swag asked me this before the show. Did I ever doubt? Dwayne Wade on the broadcast call, I know he's kind of polarizing for people. And he asked Noah Eagle at the end when they were celebrating Bron and Steph, and he goes, "Were you worried, partner?" And Dwayne's like, "Neither was I." Dude, they were down 15 going in, or down 15 with 11 seconds left in the third. I was terrified they were losing that basketball game.
Outscored them by 17 in the fourth quarter.
I love Steph. He was great. Katie, like, I know who they had. And it wasn't a give up. It was just, did I actually think they were lose? Yeah, I did. They couldn't miss a shot.
No.
We were not playing good basketball. The bench had like 6 points. So, yes, I did think they were going to lose that basketball game.
All the criticisms of Kirk coaching, wondering, is this actually going to come to an end earlier than we all imagined? It would have been a massive disappointment, despite the talent that exists on Serbia's roster. This is a team, men's basketball and women's basketball have one standard and one standard only, and that is gold medal or bust. You don't get any sort of like, hey, that's good, you want a silver, hey, you want a bronze. You have championship or bust, and anything short of that is a massive failure and a massive disappointment. And I think that has to weigh on them the further they go in this tournament, of knowing there's only one outcome here that's acceptable for the entire country, at least for the people who are actually rooting for the team to win, and that is you have to win. And so I think when you find yourself down, that pressure is massive. Like Serbia, to a certain extent, is playing with nothing to lose because nobody's expecting them to win. They're down by 16. And so it's this us against the world mentality where Team USA comes out a little tight. Serbia can't miss in the first quarter. And you're like, oh, God, we're already in a hole. You're down by 19 in the first half. You have to slightly dig out of it, but then you still have a massive deficit going into the fourth quarter that you have to crawl out of. It was an incredible back-and-forth basketball game. The second half of that game was great. And Steph Curry, when he gets on that kind of run that he was on.
That was his first one of the Olympics.
First one of the Olympics.
Largely the entire turn, like even in the friendlies, that was really his first explosion.
He is up there of the most entertaining and enjoyable athletes to ever watch when he gets into that zone, because there's just nothing that you can do when he's making shots from all over the floor and he's 9 of 14 from 3. Double team him doesn't matter. He's going around a screen, it doesn't matter. Catching it off of a screen, pin down screen, whatever. Like when he gets into that moment and into that zone, there's not many athletes in the world that I would rather watch get hot. And it was just fun and enjoyable to have it one time, not have him do that in the Moda Center against the Blazers in a big game where we actually think we could beat Golden State. Instead, he's on a team that I'm rooting for and I'm getting to enjoy and cheer on all the threes that he's making.
I'm actually surprised the amount of people that are asking out loud or saying like, oh man, I can't believe I'm rooting for so-and-so. I've never had this. In 2008, when it was the Redeem Team and Kobe's kind of leading that thing, I did not like Kobe. I rooted against Kobe his whole career.
Yes, you had to. I
didn't one time during that Olympics question it or get mad if he was the star player. I'm USA all the way. Like I don't care what team you play for. Even KD, who we've been largely critical of since he decided to join the Warriors and kind of how everything's gone for him in his NBA career, I don't hold an ounce of, oh man, it's hard to root for this guy. I never possess that with these teams. I find it a little weird that people do, that they're like, oh man, it's so hard to root for this guy. And I'm like, why? They're on the same team. What are we doing here?
It's the one time where you put all of that stuff aside. And it's not hard for me to root for them. It's a moment of, because I have a severe problem as a sports fan of being incredibly jealous. And when I watch other cities or other teams or organizations have success, there's just a jealousy that comes out. You're like, God, I want that, man. I want to experience what that is like. And it's not hard for me to root for Steph. It's just the realization of, God, this is fun. Getting to root for Steph is fun because he's so damn good when he's making shots like that. And it's like, how cool would that be to be a Warrior fan and get to watch that happen like 37 times a year? That's the Steph Curry that you get with him going off in a big game and knocking down threes. It's just it's a moment of freedom as a fan of where I don't feel jealous. He's finally on the team that I get to root for.
How much are they down if he doesn't have 17 first quarter points?
I mean, they lose that game by 15 if he doesn't show. Maybe somebody else fills in the void, but they were
who? We watched the game.
Yeah, I don't.
There's like 4
Nobody
guys
else is showing up, man.
4 players. And look, I want to give Holiday a little credit. I thought he was fine in spurts. Devin Booker was kind of an unsung hero to some extent, but like largely that game was 4 players. 4. And he, just from a points output standpoint, the most important, because if he doesn't get off to that hot start, they're probably down 25 points after the first quarter. They were as flat as you could be, and Serbia could not miss. That guy banking threes in. Abramovich could not miss. Like, they were just on fire, and we couldn't buy a bucket outside of Steph Curry.
We're firing Steve Kerr up for that one?
Let's talk about that. I thought
him.
he was easily the worst thing of that game yesterday. Kevin Durant was some good perspective yesterday in the postgame.